This man is 73 years old. He's won, 7 rings? I think 7 rings. And you're telling me this man can't make his own decisions on what stuff he wants to do? Welcome to episode 274 of Empty the Bench here on the Empty the Bench podcast network presented by Playback. He's Anthony Balester. I'm Nick Morgasen. Follow us on social media at ETB Sports, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Follow the Empty the Bench podcast network on social media at ETB Network, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Follow our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETB Network. Continuing to grow, very close to 940 subscribers. So please like and subscribe on the YouTube channel as well. If you can't watch on the video side, listen to Empty the Bench wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, you know the deal by now. We're on all audio platforms. And if you want to check us out on Substack, etbnetwork.substack.com. We're going through some changes of that now. We're doing some updates. So stay tuned to that. A lot of great content on there. No Substack from us this week, just because it's in between rounds of the NBA playoffs. So we'll catch up on that next week. We'll probably give you a deep dive into the first round, into the Giannis stuff with Milwaukee probably being out, the Dame injury, which we're going to talk about in this episode. But there's a much more interesting deep dive into that injury, including the blood clot. So that'll all come next week. And Empty the Bench is presented by Playback. Stay tuned for later on in the show to find out more. We've been doing tons of NBA playoff coverage. So check us out on there, playback.tv/ETB Network. We've done some baseball on there. Like I said, we did the NBA playoffs. And we have a whole new leg of content coming on there as well, which I'll describe in a later on episode. All right. Let's get into it. First of all, it's been 2 weeks since we did an episode. I'm just gonna raise my hand now. My fault. I was sick 1 week, and then when I was ready to do an episode last week, my voice was lost. It decided to travel out of my body and take a vacation last week. So I'm good to go now. This is a good episode to be back now. There's a lot of stuff we're gonna get into. First of all, Anthony, how was the 2 weeks off? Because now we got a lot to catch up on.
Yeah, I definitely miss doing the show. I'm definitely glad that you're doing well. Your health has to come first. But maybe sometimes it's good to take a break because it definitely got us re-energized and got us really, really excited for this upcoming show. And this is a great show to come back on.
Yeah, so just to go over this alone, much fewer topics, but a lot of good topics this week. We're going to break down the NFL draft, including a certain quarterback, which gained a lot of attention this week. And yes, I'm talking about Shedeur Sanders. We will get into that. Bill Belichick and his girlfriend disrupt CBS Sunday Morning. This is a story that irritates me, which I have a lot of thoughts on. You and I both have a lot of thoughts on. And it's just par for the course in the Bill Belichick timeline. Also, this one relates more to you. The Bills GM, Brandon Beane, goes on a AM radio station, I think in the Buffalo area. I think it's one of the flagship sports talk shows, and completely obliterates the two hosts for something they said in 2018, which I find incredible that I can barely remember something from sometimes a week ago. Like he's remembering something from 7 years ago, apparently. We'll get into all that. Dame Lillard, obviously, if you're living under a rock, has a torn Achilles, done for the playoffs, and probably done for next year as well. So a lot of altering stuff going on there. We'll get into the playoffs. And if we have some time, we'll get into UFC Fight Night. But let's get to it. Shedeur Sanders drops to the 5th round of the NFL draft. Oh, no. Oh, my God. And it created such ridiculous headlines. And I don't know. My thought was that he was never a top quarterback in the first round of the draft. I think that his name brought more value to him than he had the ability to play football. I'm not putting him down. I know he has the ability to play football, but I think it helps to have the Sanders name, and that kind of elevated him way more to the top of the list than anybody else. I think Mel Kiper Jr. also took it a little overboard during the draft, basically like kissing up to the Sanders family, which was kind of obnoxious in my opinion. But what was your first reactions of all this?
Well, I was absolutely stunned. I mean, I've been a huge supporter of Shedeur Sanders. I think he's been one of the best quarterbacks in college football for the past 2 seasons. Going to a program like Colorado, who had nothing going for them, and then completely overnight made them a competitive ball club. Now, I know he didn't win any championships, but a team like Colorado that was winning 1 or 2 games a year, and then Shedeur Sanders gets them there. And last season, they're at the end of the year, and they're about a game or 2 away from playing in a conference championship. Obviously, he had guys like Travis Hunter, but Shedeur Sanders had a lot to do with that. He also did that all with no running game. Colorado, in the entire time he was the starting quarterback, had no running game, and they had one of the worst offensive lines in college football. Now, obviously, I didn't know, the inside stuff, and when it comes to inside stuff, what's going on with these interviews and what's going on with players, teams don't like to let that information out. Now, obviously, once Shedeur Sanders dropped, and we started to get some information, the draft concluded, and he finally got drafted in the 5th round to the Cleveland Browns. We started to get some stories, and we started to kind of figure out why maybe he did drop in the draft. Now, Nick, I don't think he dropped in the draft because of talent. I think he dropped because of his dad, because there's a circus behind that, and I think also because what transpired. Now, you got to think about the events that happened. You got to remember, this was a Deion Sanders who was saying, before the season, I don't want my son playing in cold weather teams. I don't want my son playing for certain organizations. And I mean, if you're a guy who's super, super talented and you're a head over heels generation #1 overall pick, maybe you get away with that. But if you're a borderline first-round talent, even a first-round talent, you don't get away with that. Maybe one player that comes out every 10 to 15 years like a John Elway would get away with that. Shedeur Sanders, on the other hand, can't. And then you look at what happened during the offseason with Shedeur Sanders. He had an interview with Brian Daboll. He did not do too well. Supposedly, the rumor is Brian Daboll asked him a question, football-wise, and he didn't like his answer. He called him out on it, and I guess him and Shedeur Sanders went back and forth. Then there's also an anonymous scout who said they had Shedeur Sanders in for a visit. He came in there with an entourage. He walked in there with his headphones around his neck and had music playing the entire time. The GM sat there and asked him and said, "Hey, Shedeur, where do you see yourself in 5 years?" Shedeur Sanders laughed and said, "Being the mayor of the city." So obviously that's a guy that they're saying, maybe he's not taking things all that seriously. And then you see videos of him and Cam Ward talking, and he's like, "Yo, Cam Ward, why don't you do a rap song with me?" And Cam Ward's like, "Nah, I'm a football player." And he's like, "Oh, you don't have any other hobbies?" He's like, "No, when they search me up, I'm a football player. I don't do anything else." And maybe that's why he went #1 overall and Shedeur Sanders didn't. I do think he's got the talent. I think he can go to Cleveland, beat out a guy like Dillon Gabriel. And then when the Cleveland Browns are out of the playoffs and they got nothing to play for midseason, maybe they'll give Shedeur a shot. But what he's going to have to do now is he's going to have to go there and earn that. This is the first time where he's not playing under his dad. So he's going to have to earn the locker room. He's going to have to earn a starting job. And he's going to have to put in the work, because when he gets that opportunity midseason, if he doesn't make the most of it, Cleveland's drafting a quarterback next year. So ultimately, it's going to come down to Shedeur Sanders and how hard he works.
I mean, Cleveland's already made a very expensive mistake at the quarterback position, which we all know too well. And Deshaun Watson, what is there, 5 quarterbacks in that quarterback room? I mean, so you have old man Flacco, who somehow ended up on there. You have Kenny Pickett, you have Dillon Gabriel, you have Shedeur Sanders, and Deshaun Watson. So you have 5 quarterbacks, one who's automatically just not going to play. We already know that in Watson. Flacco's kind of a very cheap insurance policy, I guess is the way to look at it. I don't know why Kenny Pickett's still on an NFL roster, to be honest. I would say Shedeur is probably the second option in that, but I'm not confident in that by any means. But Deion did way too much talking. And I think it basically raised the pedestal of Shedeur in a bad way, where all eyeballs were on Shedeur Now, don't get me wrong. Like you said, he had some stats to back himself up. It's not like he was a dud out there in Colorado. But I wouldn't say Colorado is exactly the best showcase team to really show off. Because you know this better than me, what is like the big matchups for Colorado that would really be the show-off matchup?
Well, I guess when they were playing against Iowa State or BYU or Kansas State, but they weren't in the SEC going up against Georgia or Alabama or the likes of that. Now, they did the year before when they were in the Pac-12 going up against teams like Oregon and USC. They didn't do too well in some of those games. But, yeah, this year in the Big 12, it was one of the weaker conferences in the Power 4.
Right. And it was just funny watching Dion like on the coverage. Like I think at one point someone said like he was annoyed when some of the quarterbacks that were taken ahead. Well, let's go back to our NFL draft coverage and talk about that moment of you, which was such a funny moment. And it's still, by the way, it's done like a combined like 6,000 views over 3 platforms, which is incredible, by the way. So the Giants traded back up into the first round of the draft. Your first thought was they're going after Shedeur Sanders. I didn't know what to think when that trade got announced. I was probably as surprised as some Giants fans were that they traded back into the first. No one expected it to be the Giants trading back into the first. And then chaos broke loose, and I'll let you take it from there because I just thought that was an incredibly funny moment.
Yeah, it was definitely the shock of the night. I mean, you're talking about a team like the Giants who all offseason it's been, who are we going to draft, Abdul Carter, or are we going to go with the quarterback and Shedeur Sanders? Shedeur Sanders was also having Giants cleats, and it seemed like the team that liked him the most, and it seemed like the team he liked the most. And then obviously the Giants trade up, and it's like, oh my God, they're about to get both the guys that they wanted from all along. And then they take Jackson Dart, and that's something that nobody saw coming. And then when you read the reports about how the interview went with Brian Daboll and about how they just felt that Jackson Dart was a harder worker, he cared more about football, and they liked his style of play better. They think he's got a stronger arm and that he fits Brian Daboll's system better. And there's also things about Shedeur. Remember at the Combine when he's sitting there with the backwards hat on, which I have nothing against backward hats. I'm not like Colin Cowherd, but he's wearing the backwards hat. And, he's basically saying, if you're not willing to change the culture, don't draft me. So, I'm not sure, what kind of message that's sending. Yep. And then, like I said, Nick, the guy has the talent to go out there and win this starting job. And you think being a 5th round pick after dropping, you think the first thing he's on his mind with, I want to go prove him wrong. Give me the playbook. Let me go work hard. Next thing you know, you see a video and pictures on TMZ, and he's partying with Kodak Black with Louis Vuitton boxes that have hundreds of thousands of dollars in it. So it's like, is he taking it seriously or is he not?
No, I have no idea, but I saw that video of the Louis Vuitton boxes, and my first thought is, what is wrong with you as a human being? Like, you dropped 4 extra rounds in the NFL draft when your projection, if that's what you want to call it, was in the first round. And by the way, I think they said if he was in the top 3 picks, I think it was like a $40 million salary drop, if I'm not mistaken. So he was going to get 45 or around 45 if he got drafted in the top 3. And I think he got $4 million or something for being in the 5th round, which, by the way, can we not sneeze at $4 million? Because I think any one of us here at this network would kill to make $4 million a year. But it was such an incredible moment that his stock just kept dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping. And people are going nuts on social media. Like, what's going on here? It's collusion. And then Stephen A. Smith, who I think he does things sometimes for clickbait situations. And I'm trying to find the tweet because it was such an outrageous tweet where he basically was saying that the NFL and the GMs were colluding against Shedeur, and it's a race situation. And like my head I just did like one of those just like come on, man. Like There's no way this is a race situation, right?
And no, and what the thing was, because they knew they couldn't use just straight race because Cam Ward went first overall. So they were saying it's not that a black quarterback dropped. They were saying things like, oh, it's a black quarterback that happens to dress and act like a rapper, and that's why he dropped. Well, if that's the case, I remember not so long ago a quarterback who kind of talked and acted sort of like Shedeur Sanders, but he was considered a generational talent, and that was Cam Newton, who was over 6'5", 235 pounds, running a 4.5, 4.6. And even though he talked and acted like Shedeur Sanders, his talent just so much outweighed, the off-field issue. So this is definitely not a race thing. And one last few things I'll say about this, Nick. You were saying how, the couple million that he's going to get is nothing to sneeze at. We got to remember that Shedeur Sanders is a part of, the first group of athletes in college football to get paid. This was a guy who was making probably $4 to $6 million per year playing college football. He's actually going to be making less money now playing in the NFL than he was playing in college football. And Nick, I'm guessing you probably obviously saw it, but man, he had the chains on. The chain that he had on probably worth a couple $100,000 on the draft, and then his custom room with the legendary and his logo on it. I mean, come on now. I understand that's your logo, but at least win something, accomplish something before you call yourself legendary.
I mean, it's all about branding now in today's NIL world. These guys are coming out of college football with brands and agents and a marketing manager. Like, that wasn't a thing when you entered the NFL, 10 years ago? That was not a thing. Like, you had to earn your agent once you got to the NFL level, and your marketing manager and your sponsors and advertisers. Now they're coming out of college football with all this stuff built in. So it's a completely different world that we're talking about. And by the way, I found the tweet, so he said this was on April 25th. I think that was the day of the draft. Someone just texted me this message, and they're absolutely correct. Quote, "This is a bad look for the NFL. This feels like Kaepernick-level collusion. All the hard work the NFL league office puts in to eradicate these kind of perceptions, only to turn around and watch the owners look like they're colluding, messing up everything. What has been done to Shedeur will outshine everything else in the draft. We'll never believe this is about just talent evaluation again." Are you serious? Collusion? Kaepernick-style collusion?
It's ridiculous.
Really? Tell me, maybe because the NFL circles a little better than me, where is the Kaepernick-style collusion? Kaepernick did it to himself, number one. And that's why supposedly the owners colluded against it. And by the way, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Kaepernick won a lawsuit outside the NFL, and they had to pay off, and the NFL had to pay off a collusion settlement. So that's a whole different can of worms. There's no evidence of collusion in this situation. So anyone who says collusion, where is the facts to back it up?
There's none. And there's no comparison with him and Colin Kaepernick, because Colin Kaepernick wasn't really doing off-field issues. He wasn't, a cancer in the locker room. Yes, he was kneeling, and yes, a lot of people were against that. But he wasn't doing the things that a lot of people were questioning with Shedeur Sanders. And the thing is, with Colin Kaepernick, that we knew he was better than 5 to 10 of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL. So we knew he was being boycotted in the NFL because we knew that there was some really, really, I hate to say it, some shitty quarterbacks in the NFL that he did better than. The Shedeur Sanders thing is completely different. We're talking about a quarterback who talent-wise should be a first-round pick, but he's not a first-round pick because of the things he did leading up to the draft in terms of the interviews and everything else. There's a way that you have to conduct yourself. And when we've seen guys like Johnny Manziel and other quarterbacks who have acted similar ways who bust, why do teams want to make that same mistake again? And when you've got a guy who's talking and acting like he wants to be a rapper, you got to question, is this guy even fully committed to football? And I love Shedeur Sanders, but after seeing these reports, I understand why teams think that. So Stephen A. Smith was completely off the ball on this one.
I'll give you another example, since people need an example to really understand this. Think about the Ball family in the NBA. If you remember Lonzo and LaMelo and LiAngelo, who got himself in trouble in China with that whole situation, and Trump had to bail him out and all that nonsense. But do you remember when those two infiltrated the NBA and LeVar just didn't shut up? And people got a bad taste in their mouth when that family entered the NBA. Do you remember how expensive the shoes were that LeVar put out? Like you almost had to pay a house payment on those shoes. That's how expensive they were. I think the Sanders thing is heading down the Ball family route again. And do you really think that the NFL could take a lesson from the NBA and say, we already dealt with this. We're not going to deal with this again. We don't want to deal. LeVar, if you remember, LeVar went on Colin Cowherd's show and completely insulted Christine Leahy, who was sitting right next to him. And that worries me about Dion and the family. Like, what are they going to do?
I definitely agree. And I would say the only difference is obviously Dion is much more respected and obviously much more accomplished than LeVar Ball. I mean, LeVar Ball was just basically a former D1 athlete that got a little bit of a pro tryout but never went anywhere. We're talking about Dion, who's in the conversation for just the greatest athlete of all time, a guy who played in the MLB and in the NFL and is the greatest quarterback that ever played a game. On the flip side, though, I think LeVar Ball's sons are obviously much more talented. I mean, Lonzo Ball and LaMelo Ball are two of the most talented guys that come out in the draft. We're talking about guys who are 6'6", 6'7", who could play the guard position, who could defend, pass the ball, and in LaMelo's case, shoot the ball as well. So those guys were super, uber talented. But, yes, I could definitely see why teams would have wanted to deal with a head case. And, when anything goes wrong with Shedeur Sanders, if you don't name him the starter, or there was rumors saying coaches didn't want to draft him in the first round because they're worried if you get fired, they could have Dion come in and replace you. So there's just all these things that are going on.
You beat me to that point. I was going to say that too. Like, I think people are afraid, Dion can come take my head coaching job. Like, so I don't blame people for that. But this is just such a head case situation. And by the way, the NFL draft was like kissing butt to the Sanders family like crazy. I'll ask you, how many players get drafted in the NFL approximately every year?
It's usually about around the 250. Sometimes they had a couple more, but usually around 257, 258.
Okay, you're telling me that the other guys in the draft don't matter? Like that's what ESPN felt like at one point. Mel Kiper Jr. would not let it go. Why is he not drafted? Oh my God. Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, there's so many other good guys that deserve to be talked about in this draft, and he's too busy being obsessed.
Put it this way, Nick. When was the last time you had a star quarterback go number 1 overall on Cam Ward, and pretty much nobody really talked about him?
I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to ask you that he was interviewed, I think, once or twice, and they said to him, like, are you going to do any partying or any of this stuff? And he said no. Like you were saying before, he's an NFL. I'm a football player. I do everything right. I don't do stupid things. You're not going to see me with the expensive jewelry around my neck. I'm a parent's kid. And I was like, wow, someone who actually cares about the sport of football and doesn't want to get in trouble while entering the league. These are two completely different guys. Shedeur is in it for the same thing that Dion was, which is why he got the nickname Primetime. Now, Dion backed up his game, and that's why Dion is a Hall of Famer. Because even though he was an asshole sometimes on the field or a jerk, what did Dion do best? He scored touchdowns. So he kind of offset a lot of the stuff that he did on and off the field. I don't know about Shedeur. Now, I'm not going to go as far as some of these tabloids who went out there and said, well, Shedeur could get cut before the season starts. But what I will say is I wouldn't be surprised if at some point, if Shedeur is a real head case, that they do cut him loose at some point. Because maybe they just don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, and it's fine if you're the starting quarterback, but like Colin Cowherd always said, there's a reason why you don't see guys like Tim Tebow and Johnny Manziel as backup quarterbacks, because you don't want celebrity quarterbacks and guys who are going to be in headlines as a backup quarterback distracting the team.
Empty the Bench is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And now back to the show. All right, we'll move on because we could spend 3 hours on this topic, but it's just fascinating how that whole thing fell. All right, another interesting headline from the NFL world. It comes in the form of Bill Belichick. So Bill Belichick's girlfriend disrupts CBS Sunday Morning interview. Now, everyone has seen this interview for the most part. First of all, I was shocked that he even agreed to do a sit-down long-form interview. That's just not who he is as a personality or an individual. And I'm watching, and then his girlfriend, and I want to make sure I get her name right. I think it's Jordon Hudson is her name. I've never seen someone just like go beast mode on control. And then she interrupts the interview saying, because I think the guy, whoever the interviewer was, says, well, how'd you meet? And she's just like, no, I'm shutting that down. And I'm like, there's something wrong here. So what did you make of the interview, number one?
Yeah, I wasn't initially surprised as you were to see Belichick doing this. I mean, if you notice, ever since he left the New England Patriots, we've been seeing a different side of Bill Belichick, a Bill Belichick that's been opening up more. I mean, he did the Tom Brady roast. He's been doing, obviously, some of the Manning cast. He's been doing appearances. He's been doing a lot of things on television, and he's been laughing a lot. He's been opening up and more, joking around, and he didn't seem to be the same serious Belichick. It seemed like he was starting to finally open up to everybody. And then all of a sudden, he's doing his interview, and the interview got really, really awkward. You know, even when they asked him about the social media post, he started getting really awkward about that, saying, oh, I have no control over it. I don't know what that is. And, you know, we know that's a bold-faced lie. He knows everything that's getting posted, you know, and who knows? Maybe some of those pictures were his ideas, probably not. But, you know, at the end of the day, it was very, very awkward, and it makes me beg the question, you know, maybe this is why Hard Knocks and him weren't a good fit. Maybe that's why, you know, him and Hard Knocks decided not to do it. Maybe he didn't want, maybe Belichick wanted the creative control, Nick, like you said a couple months ago, and maybe it was stemming from his girlfriend always being involved with everything that they did. And that's why there's reports now about North Carolina being worried about her involvement. And it seems like, you know, sometimes she kind of acts like a PR person, but then other times it seems like there's more to the story than what there is.
I mean, I was shocked when I read in the New York Post article they just put out on this interview that I didn't know she was involved in the negotiations with NFL Films for Hard Knocks. That's a little bit of a scary thought, in my opinion, that she's allowed to control anything for this. This man is 73 years old. He's won, was it 7 rings? I think 7 rings. And you're telling me this man can't make his own decisions on what stuff he wants to do? I mean, I don't know. That one blew my mind. And then obviously the email signature that she has, according to The Athletic, says Jordon Hudson is Chief Operating Officer of Belichick Productions. How lame, number one, that you're letting a 25-year-old, 50 years, you're, was it senior or junior, or however you say that. But it's crazy. He's letting a 25-year-old control his life.
Yeah, and then I seen, obviously, you've probably seen the TikTok videos of Belichick at spring practices with North Carolina, and she's basically right there, as if like she's like coaching and scouting the team as well.
She's wearing a whistle.
Yes, I guess at this point, Nick, no matter what Bill Belichick does, I guess him and Jordon Hudson are going to be a package deal. You can't have one without the other.
I mean, what? Like, this whole thing is crazy to me. Like, I never seen somebody take over in such a way that this is controlled. And then, like we said, she interrupts the interview and says not talking about that. And then it gets awkward because then the interviewer has to turn and say, well, are you going to let him talk about anything? And apparently, like, we knew that it was at least once that she interrupted. And then they had a delay for 30 minutes. Reportedly, it was twice that she did it. So First of all, why are you interrupting an interview for 30 minutes? You're there for a reason. Just get the dumb thing done and move on. If you know an athlete or a coach, they want to get through an interview process and be done because they have a method to the madness to keep it moving. But I don't know, man. Like she's a scary individual, in my opinion, and she's 7 years younger than me, for crying out loud. I mean, the pictures are stupid. I mean, the one of him in the rain jacket wearing the weird hat, and she's in the mermaid, and he's got a fishing rod, or what's the classic one of where he's holding her up, and he's laying on his back on the beach, and like it's so awkward. He's 73, she's 25. It's a generational age gap historically. Like, oh my God. Like, and apparently they were friends for a while, which that's kind of awkward too, if you ask me. But like, I don't know what else what can you say about this? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a very awkward situation. I'm not sure what's going to be the end game here. If she's trying to ride it out, and basically try to stay with him, I'm not sure exactly if this is true love or if she's with him for the right or wrong reasons. It definitely seems there's a lot of stuff you need to question. But I really want to find out is how they really met. Obviously, there's a lot to tell there, and there's a reason why they don't want to tell us the real story. I'm not going to speculate. Obviously, you could go on Twitter and find a bunch of million reasons of why they probably met, but it's probably a reason that they don't want the public to know.
But you're a public figure. Everyone's going to ask you what. That's what you sign up for in this business. When you're a public figure, you're a public figure. People are going to find out. So either you tell them up front, or people are going to find out awkwardly, and then you have to deal with it after the fact. So I don't know. She's a weirdo. I don't care. I'm going to have as many opinions about her as I want because she has no idea how to handle this Bill and his situation and all the media appearances. And it's like you said before, it's like a PR person. It's really not a relationship. It's more of a PR person that lives in your house. So I don't know. I mean, is it awkward? Yes. Is it fixable? No. But we'll have to see what happens. But it was an incredibly awkward interview. Speaking of incredibly awkward interviews, Bill's GM Brandon Beane was on WGR 550. Now, you're in the area. Have you ever heard this station or at all? Of course. And it was on the Jeremy and Joe show. I don't know if you've ever heard of that show or and it got really awkward. And I have the audio over here because you really can't give it context without hearing it, right? So listen to Brandon Beane here because this gets awkward.
It was. I was just listening to the last few minutes of your show before I came on, waiting on here.
All right.
Sounds like 2018 all over with you guys.
Well, how so?
Well, you guys were bitching in 2018 about Josh Allen. You guys wanted Josh Rosen, and now you guys are bitching that we don't have a receiver. I don't get it. Like, we just hold on, let me talk. We just scored 30 points in a row for 8 straight games. A year ago, I get you guys asking why we didn't have receivers, but I don't understand it now. You just saw us lead the league in points when you add all the postseason. No one scored more points than the Buffalo Bills, including the Super Bowl champions. So you just saw us do it without Stephon Diggs, same group. How is this group not better than last year's group? Our job is to score points and win games. Where do we need to get better? Defense. We did that. So I get it. You got to have a show and you got to have something to bitch about, but bitching about wide receiver is one of the dumbest arguments I've heard.
Okay, so I'll let you talk about this for quite a few minutes, but my first problem with this, and you know this about me, I'm a radio person. That's my industry. I grew up in it. I worked in talk radio for 4 years. I've never seen. I mean, I've seen plenty of unprofessionalism. I don't know what he was thinking. One, remembering something from 7 years ago, which, by the way, that's really good memory if you do. And you really are going to go out and call radio hosts out because you want to give yourself a pat on the back that you finally got the quarterback right and you got the offense right, and you do have a really good team. Not questioning that at all whatsoever. But this could have been handled way better.
Yeah, I definitely agree, Nick. When you look at this, it was definitely unprofessional, and I'm surprised because a guy like Brandon Beane has usually been up to this point pretty professional. He hasn't really lost his cool, but I understand his point. And if you're a Buffalo Bills fan, you definitely remember 2018 because in 2018, everybody wanted the Buffalo Bills to draft Josh Rosen. Josh Rosen was the pocket passer, the very accurate quarterback. And I'll even admit it, Nick, I didn't want Josh Allen. I didn't think Josh Allen would make it in the NFL. He was super inaccurate. He made a lot of mistakes in college. And up to that point, quarterbacks that completed under 60% of the throws didn't make it in the NFL. And then you had a guy like Josh Rosen, who since he was a 14-year-old kid, he was a prodigy. And everybody talked about how he was this next great quarterback and he could be the next Tom Brady in terms of a pocket passer. And when the Bills go out and draft Josh Allen, the Bills fans gave Beane a lot of slack for that. And then obviously you look what happened with Josh Rosen, and then you look what happened with Josh Allen. One guy's in the conversation for the best quarterback in the league. The other guy was out of the league in a couple of years. So he absolutely was right on that point. And, Nick, each offseason, the fans have always complained, no matter what it is. And we've been addressing the offense. We drafted Keon Coleman last year. We drafted Dalton Kincaid the year before. We drafted we signed Josh Palmer. And even after doing that, they complained about the defense. Then Beane goes out there and builds the defense after knowing we had a great offense last year. Josh Allen and the offense kept putting the Bills in a position to win the game. It was the defense that kept letting them down. We needed corners, we needed D linemen, and we needed some edge rushers. And he went out and got that for us. He got the corner, he got the D tackles, and I think he had probably one of the best drafts. And you also, when you look at the way the draft fell to us, there wasn't really many receiver options at the times that they picked. All the good receivers that were worth those picks either went before that they drafted. So I absolutely agree with him. Yes, he could have handled it more professionally, but he has a good point, Nick. There was no reason to bash on the Bills draft. We all been saying defense, and then when he drafts defense, they're going to complain about receivers. So he said it perfectly. The guys on radio for some reason in Buffalo have to have something to bitch about.
I get it. I understand it. But you're also a GM of a professional sporting franchise. Like, you have to pick your moments, or as they say, we used to learn this as kids, you got to pick your battles sometimes. And I don't know if fighting with radio hosts is exactly a good battle to fight, because that's now public persona that's out there. People can listen to that. And the other thing I didn't like either, because he says, oh, well, you guys were bitching about Josh Allen in 2018. Nobody knew what Josh Allen was going to be in 2018. That's the problem with the NFL draft, or not the NFL draft, the hitting on the percentages of success in the NFL draft. You have no idea what you're going to get and if the big names are going to work. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Josh Rosen was Arizona, right? That he played a few years and then he flamed out and after Arizona. I remember that exactly. And everyone said, oh, he's the big name. And then it's almost like the NFL passed him by in 2 years. Josh Allen, by the way, really developed into a game, which no one expected, right?
Yeah, no one expected him to be in the conversation and be in the MVP of the league and in the conversation for best player in football.
So I get why he's upset, but also think about it. You've never won a Super Bowl title either. Now, let me preface it with the point you said, which there are a lot of teams that haven't won Super Bowls, and you could fire a GM, but it's been a very long time, and you've had really good teams at the top. First of all, as a Jet fan, I would kill to have a team the way the Bills are built. But we can only get what we wish for when the GM decides to do their job properly. But the Bills have had chances, I think, is what people are frustrated with. And they probably could have won a Super Bowl or two. If
a lot of those games, I mean, look at the 13-second game. I mean, that's a game that could go either way. I mean, we saw the Kansas City game last year with the controversial calls. That's a game that could go either way. So, you got these games that are basically a flip of a coin, and one or two plays, maybe the Bills are already in Super Bowls and playing it. And like you said, if you keep putting yourself in those positions, at some point the flip of the coin has to go your way.
No, that I agree with 1,000%. That eventually someone's going to have to get over the heap. Like it took Patrick Mahomes a few seasons to get over the heap, and then he won more Super Bowls. And now look at his situation. Now he's I don't know if I want to say all timer yet, but he's getting there, and he's making Super Bowls, and he's won 2, and like it's he's going to have a Hall of Fame career probably by the end of it. Now, the difference is going to be is Josh Allen needs to make a Super Bowl and really move that needle forward and start winning. He's good. I think he's going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback regardless, just because of his numbers. But he's got to get I think he needs a title, like in the worst way, desperately, to really move that needle forward to put him in the next level.
And the sad thing is, Nick, as great as I think Brandon Beane has been as a GM, and as great as I think McDermott is as a head coach, and how great the Bills have done as an organization, I think if Josh Allen does finish his career without a Super Bowl, I don't think we're going to be saying it was because of what Josh Allen did. It's going to be about what the organization did around him.
No, I agree with that 1,000% too. That sometimes it's not the all-star that's on the roster. It's just that you don't get the right pieces around you to win championships. I mean, we could talk about all types of guys that never won a title. Charles Barkley in the NBA would be a good example. How many amazing teams did Charles Barkley play on in his career and never won a title?
It's because he had to go through Michael Jordan.
Well, that didn't help either. That he was playing in Jordan era basketball. Most of the big name players in the Jordan era didn't win. But you could have a really good player and just not have the right mesh of players to really finish. Like, if I remember correctly, like Milano, that was a big guy defensively. He's been hurt. That was a big name for them. Hopefully, is he healthy now? Because I think that's a huge piece for them.
Yeah, he's supposed to be back next season.
He made a huge difference when he was on the field. Huge. So, and that's what you were talking about, defense. Like, they're really building that side of the ball again. So, we'll have to wait and see. I wish he handled that better. That's really more Mike Ripe. I don't have a problem with the fact that he wanted to speak out about certain people giving them crap over certain things, but be better, please. All right. Let's transition to sports here, and let's move to the injury that was heard around the world, basically. Damian Lillard, star for the Bucks. I didn't know what to expect when he first fell over, by the way. I thought maybe he turned an ankle. I thought whatever it was, he misstepped, which a lot of NBA players do. And then he tries to get up and can't get up. And I said, uh-oh, this is a problem. We were watching this game too, and I'm like, oh boy. I said right off the bat, I said his season's over. I said he can't walk. And I also said during that, if his season's over, the Bucks are cooked 100%. There's no way they could win that series without Dame. And eventually we find out the next day that it was confirmed in the worst way news that he has a torn Achilles. This is coming off the blood clot situation, which, again, 2 very serious injuries back to back. It's basically confirmed that he's going to miss all of next year because of the injury happening right in the playoffs. I feel bad for the guy because the guy played in Portland all those years, didn't have a great team around him. He stuck it out and really was a Portland guy, and finally gets traded to a team that could have won with Giannis. Just never happened that way. Thoughts?
Yeah, I was definitely shocked. I knew it was serious, but I didn't think it was going to be torn Achilles. Probably the worst possible scenario at this point for a guy who's kind of a shorter guard and this style of play. A torn Achilles is devastating for him. Obviously, he'll still always have his shot. But, man, like you said, a guy like Dame who gave his heart and soul to Portland, never got the team around him that he deserved. finally got to play with a guy like Giannis in Milwaukee, and both the guys just happen to seem to get any luck. And, Dame, between the blood clot and now this, doesn't seem like we're ever going to be able to see a deep playoff run with Giannis and Damian Lillard. This type of injury, I don't think, obviously, he'll have to retire. I do think he'll probably be back in the 2026-2027 season, but you're probably going to get a couple more years of a Damian Lillard that's not the same Damian Lillard. You're going to be getting a guy who is probably going to be no longer an all-star level player. Probably a guy who you're going to want to be as your third or fourth go-to guy. He's not going to be a guy who you could have as your second go-to guy on the championship team anymore. And the Milwaukee Bucks are obviously going to know that. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do now. Are they going to decide to trade Giannis after next year and go into a rebuild? That seems like it would be to make the most sense. And it sucks for a team like Milwaukee, even if you do have Giannis, they're not really a free agent destination. Milwaukee is a city that doesn't really have a lot to do, and a lot of free agents don't like to go there. So the only way Milwaukee really acquires stars is either through the draft or by trade. Now, obviously, they're not going to probably get any stars by trade. So the only thing that makes sense is having to rebuild through the draft. So it's unfortunate for the Bucks because, it's probably going to have some dark times and have some bad seasons ahead. But hey, you had Giannis for a good amount of time. You got some MVPs out of him. He did deliver you a championship, and it's just like Kareem. Kareem came in there, Kareem delivered them a championship, and then went off to LA. If Giannis leaves, they got no hard feelings. He delivered them a championship and did everything they could. And honestly, I don't think he'd want to leave. I think he'd be leaving because it's probably in the best interest for the team to probably rebuild, because as great as Giannis is, you're probably only getting to a first or second round appearance if he's your only catalyst on the team.
It's ironic you brought up Kareem in LA, because that's one of the rumors going around for Giannis, that he could end up with the Lakers, which I don't even know if they can afford that right now, the way that cap situation is in LA. But can you imagine like a Luka and a Giannis together on a team? That would be insane in of epic proportions. I mean, excuse me. I'm looking at numbers too. Losing Lillard, 10th in the NBA in points and assists per game during the regular season. That's a big guy to lose. And you're losing your floor general, the guy that leads everything. Now you're going to see Giannis get double and triple teamed the rest of the way. So their goose is cooked, basically, at this point. They're going to get eliminated. I think, to be honest, this just pushes the fast forward button on the rebuild process for Milwaukee. And if I'm Giannis, I'd probably say, can I get myself out of here unscathed at this point? Whether it's the Lakers, I'm trying to think what teams he'd really fit with, to be honest.
For the Lakers, though, I mean, yeah, they could probably get rid of Austin Reeves and some draft picks and other guys, but that's a team that already struggles with depth. Now, if you trade all that for Giannis, that's all they're going to have is those players. I'm not sure if they'd have the depth, and any injury to those star players, they'd be out of it. I know one team that I can kind of see is the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics have a lot of great players, and honestly, instead of having the Jaylen Brown and Tatum combo, you could have the Tatum and Giannis combo.
I don't think they would trade Brown, though, to be honest. I just don't see that happening. That would almost be unfair if you could somehow keep Tatum and Brown and put Giannis in there. That would just be – that reminds me of like the Bulls teams in the 90s, almost, if they managed to get Giannis. But tough look. I feel bad for Dame. And he's another one where he's had a really good career, great regular season numbers, can't get to the top. I mean, Dame kind of reminds me of Melo a little bit, where Carmelo Anthony, really good player, really good offensive scorer. I think he was in the Hall of Fame class, right? Also, did he get the nod or no?
Yeah, I think he just got in this year.
Okay, so I mean, he deserves it. He was one of the best offensive players of his generation in the NBA. He just was never on a good enough team to win a playoff series, let alone a title. Denver was probably his closest situation, I think, right? So New York teams were not good enough. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Dame, but I feel bad for him. Hopefully he recovers and he can get back on the court. All right, let's transition into the playoffs. This has been a very, very interesting 2025 NBA playoffs. You could pick your poison of certain series and really get to the bottom of it. I don't know. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you can start in a million different places. I think the one thing that stands out to me, the Minnesota Timberwolves being 3-1 against the Lakers, and the Lakers being on the brink of being eliminated in the first round. Now, obviously, they just got Luka, and you probably couldn't expect them to go all the way to the championship their first year together. They don't really have a true center. They don't have any depth. And this kind of seems like a team that's probably a year away from going on their deep playoff run. But for them to be eliminated in the first round, I mean, no one expected that. And I mean, we're talking about a Timberwolves team who kind of started off this season not that strong, but has gotten really, really hot. And it's behind Anthony Edwards, who has been on an absolute tear, dropping 40 points. And I know you got Julius Randle, you got Naz Reid, but it's basically Anthony Edwards against LeBron and Luka. And he's basically going toe-to-toe with both those guys. And Luka's not doing any help. He's not playing any defense whatsoever. Obviously, LeBron's 40 years old, so you can't depend on him to be perfect throughout the whole game. So he's got his issues going on as well. And, I mean, you're expecting LeBron to play over 40 minutes every single night. And they just don't have an answer for Anthony Edwards, and he's basically bullying this Lakers team. And I know LeBron came back from 3-1 before, but I'm not sure they had the depth or the team to do it in, and I don't think Anthony Edwards is going to allow it to happen.
So the way I look at that series, first of all, I think the Timberwolves are the better team. That's just my perception of it. Also, the seeds are BS. No, the seeds mean nothing to me at all. It's just a culmination of records. So they have to put a seed in front of you to say, I was the 1 seed, the 2 seed. Anyone could win any series. Let's be honest. Even an 8 seed, we've seen over the years an 8 seed beat a 1 seed. It's happened. I mean, heck, look at and I can transition to this one as well. Look at the Warriors-Rockets series. I think the Warriors are the better team. Even though they're old and decrepit and ready for AARP, but they have the experience that's necessary. By the way, that game the other night was incredible. Incredible. The way that game, not the way it ended, but it was a great game. And Steph looks like himself all over again, even though I think he's, 37 or 38 now? Draymond's still huffing and puffing out there. Too many. First of all, I like all the skirmishes, and I like when it gets physical. Maybe the refs got a little too involved with the technical fouls, but that was I think that's been a great series so far.
Oh, yeah, Nick. And I think, with the Warriors are a team that's won multiple championships. They got the playoff experience. I feel like the Rockets, this is their first year, in the playoffs with this, group of young players. And I always felt like the Rockets were a year away. I feel like they're like OKC a couple years ago when they first made the playoffs. But, I think on the flip side, I don't think the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Lakers are similar at all to that, because the Lakers should be the team that's got the experience. LeBron is the one who's got multiple championships. Luke is the guy who was just in the finals recently. So they should have the experience over Minnesota. But like you said, Nick, outside of those two guys that the Lakers have, the roster from 1 through 8, the Timberwolves are better. They have the better depth. And that's why the Lakers are struggling now, because you have to have Austin Reeves, LeBron, and Luka play the entire game and have no support. I mean, this is a team that's getting like 2 to 6 bench points a night. You're not going to win that way.
I'll give you the other one. So if I threw the seeds away, which is what I said before, and you looked at the Lakers Timberwolves series, without looking at the seeds, who would you say is the better team?
Oh, I think the Timberwolves are the better team. But I obviously, in the playoffs, sometimes the team who has the best 2 players sometimes, could win the series. And on every given night, Luka and LeBron could be the 2 best players in that series. But so far this series, neither of them have been the best player. It's been Anthony Edwards.
By the way, Anthony Edwards has been putting on a clinic since the playoffs have started. They go where he goes. That's the way I look at it. If he has a bad game, they're going to have a bad game. If he has a really good game, he's going to lead them all the way through in 4 quarters. So it's all a matter of how far he really wants to push to get to the end. I'll mention this series quick because it was a rout, but the Thunder beating the Grizzlies, and I have no sympathy for John Morant whatsoever, who basically thought that he could win that series if he was healthy, which I laughed at, by the way, because the Thunder, record-wise, were the best team in the NBA. I think they had 64 wins. I think they were 64-18, right up there with the Cavs. The Grizzlies had no chance in that series whatsoever. That I have nothing else to say if you want to say one thing or whatever, but that's the nicest thing I can say about that series.
Yeah, I think maybe if John Morant didn't get hurt, maybe they don't get swept. I know there was that one game that was kind of close, that they could have won, and they gave up that huge lead. So maybe if John Morant plays, it's a 5 games, but it didn't make a difference whether it's 4 games or 5 games. We knew OKC was going to move on. The last 2 things I want to say about the playoffs so far is, one, Aaron Gordon's game-winning dunk off the missed shot from Jokic. That's been a tremendous series. That's probably been the best series so far. I can see that going 7 games with the way Kawhi Leonard's been playing, with the way Nikola Jokic is playing. You got prime Kawhi Leonard. That's a series that's going back and forth that could go definitely game 7. And then one last thing I want to say is, yes, the Knicks have been the best team, and most likely they were going to win the series, and they kind of been giving Cade Cunningham fits, but they definitely missed that call. They definitely should have called that foul, and that would have gave the Pistons a win, which now you're talking a series that's 2-2 instead of 3-1.
That call frustrated me, the way they handled that whole situation. Tim Hardaway gets clearly fouled. Like, it's not even close. And he's fouled in air, behind the three-point line. Now, by the way, regardless if they call the foul or not, the Pistons were in the bonus, so they should have had the opportunity to tie regardless. It should have been a 3-point shot, so there should have been 3 shots. The head official, and I hate when they do this, by the way, the head official speaks to the pool reporter after the game and says, and admits that they missed the foul. What does that do after the fact? Tell me what that does after.
I guess it just shows that the referees are willing to announce their mistakes, but it doesn't change the outcome of the game. It doesn't help Pistons fans.
Because I was screaming at my screen, like, and I'm a Net fan, but like I was screaming at my screen, saying, "Where is the foul? Where is the foul?" Like the refs single-handedly put their fingerprints on this game by not calling that foul, and their explanation in the moment was, well, it happened so fast that it looked like there was no illegal contact. Are you kidding me? That was like the blind leading the blind. That you didn't see that foul. I mean, and there was Knicks fans like huffing and puffing with their chest out, saying that, oh, we won that game fair and square. No, you did not. You did not win that game fair and square. You should have lost that game.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Now, they have been the better team throughout the series, but that one particular game, I mean, he should get 3 shots, and that should have given him a 1-point lead, which potentially evens up the series at 2-2. Now 3-1, Pistons are looking like they're probably going to be going home.
And Knicks fans are incredible sometimes on social media, because I was going back and forth with some of them through our account, and I would say, well, the Knicks dominated this series. Huh? What? They almost lost both game 1 and 2. Almost lost both. They could have lost all these games so far. But Knicks fans are saying, oh, well, we dominated. No, you did not. You absolutely did not dominate this series. Quickly, just going through the rest. Cavs, we don't have to say anything. The Cavs are just dominant. And that game 4 was incredible. Just watching that whole thing. I mean, there's not much else to really add there, right?
No, the Cavs just absolutely dismantled the Miami Heat. Obviously, the Heat was a team that probably shouldn't even been in the playoffs. I mean, they had to win 2 playing games to make it, so they already overachieved. You're talking a team that just recently moved on from Jimmy Butler, so they're still trying to build their team in the post-Jimmy Butler era. But it just goes to show you right now the Cavs are on a different level, and it's going to be interesting to see when the Cavs play a team that might be closer to the level in the second round.
Yeah, so that's not a surprise. They were 1 seed. That's pretty much destined for the 2-7 matchup, I think. I think that's going to be Celtics Magic. Both those series had no chances. I mean, I'll just move to that one. Orlando gave them more of a fight than I thought they were going to. They stole a game. I thought possibly they were going to sweep, maybe, or win it in 5, which is where it looks like it's possibly heading now. But the Celtics are just dominant offensively. And that was just the way that series really went. But it's going to be collision course. Cavs Celtics. I think that's going to be an incredible series.
Oh, for sure. The Celtics, like I said, look like, the toughest team to beat. They got the deepest and best roster in basketball, and they're going up against the Cavs, who's one of the hottest teams. That's definitely going to be a great series. The Magic with Paolo Banchero, though, I definitely think as great as he is, you got to at least let them get one game. I think, beating the Magic, you're not going to be able to sweep them because I think Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner could at least get you one. But the Celtics are the better team. They're going to win this series, and like you said, Nick, maybe Knicks fans think they got a shot, but it does seem like it's going to be the Cavs and Boston, unless the Knicks have something to say about it.
Yeah, I'm not let me say one thing. I give credit to the Knicks because they've really turned it around in the last couple of years, but they're going to get trounced by the Celtics. It's not going to be close. The Celtics are far better at every position on the court than the Knicks. It's not close. Having Jalen Brunson, maybe they steal a game. If Jalen Brunson goes off for a 40-point game and just has an all-out perfect game, maybe they still won at home. But they don't have enough depth. The Celtics have depth on their bench in the second unit. The Knicks don't even have that. So I think that one's going to go fast. Quickly, Pacers Bucks, which we were talking about a little bit earlier. Like I said, when Dame went down, that was the end of the series. There's not much else to add to that, right?
Yeah, I think maybe Giannis could win a game himself, maybe extend the series, but it's going to be the Pacers series to win.
A lot of these are lopsided. I was kind of hoping for some extended series, but I'd rather the first round go quick so that by the time you get to the semis and eventually the conference finals, that's when you want the longer series because you want to see the best teams playing the most amount of games. But I don't know. I mean, the top teams are doing their job. The Thunder are doing their job. The Rockets are not. But that one was expected, I feel like. Cavs doing their job. Celtics doing their job.
Lakers not so much.
Not so much, no. But I think the Timberwolves are a better team. That's the classic case of the seeds don't matter. The seeds mean nothing. People say, oh, well, look, it's the number 3 Lakers taking on the number 6 Timberwolves. No, you don't look at it that way. Those are just rankings. That's it. So, I laugh at that. Like when we were watching March Madness games, the seeds really don't matter. It's, who the dominant team is, whoever that is, whoever's the 1 seed. And that's why March Madness is the way it is, and it's fun over the years because you're going to get an upset from time to time in the tournament. And same thing with the NBA. You could get an upset if you run into the wrong team. So it's all a matter of who's on the hot streak, who has all the chemistry going. And I don't know. Where do you see this as an early NBA Finals since we're kind of through the first round?
Honestly, I did my bracket before the playoffs started, and I don't see no reason to change it. I still think we're destined to get an OKC Celtics matchup, which ultimately would be awesome to watch. To see Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the way OKC likes to play defense against the Celtics, that would be a tremendous series.
And I don't think OKC's offense is a slouch by any means either. Shai with that double streak, and I think he's going to be named the MVP in the coming days also, unless they somehow decide to give it to Jokic, which I kind of hope they don't do, to be honest. SGA has earned every amount of that MVP this year. The way I look at the finals, I could see Cavs or Celtics coming out of that series. I really could. But the Celtics have been there before. And like we said, experience matters. Tatum and Brown got it in their system now. And I think that's going to help them against the Cavs. At least this version of the Cavs, which are a much younger, more up-and-coming franchise. So, because if I'm not mistaken, Mitchell hasn't really been anywhere in the playoffs since he's been in the league. It's with the
I
Jazz.
don't think he's ever been past the second round of the playoffs in his career. That's where he's kind of always fell short. So this is going to be a real interesting series for Donovan Mitchell for a second round.
But I would also say this is the best team Donovan Mitchell has played on since he's entered the NBA. And the one last thing I'll say about the Cavs, they're doing this all without Darius Garland. That's incredible to me, by the way. Imagine when he comes back. This team is going to be scary. Scary. The NBA playoffs have been fun, finally, for a change. For the first time in a very long time. The numbers were up. I think they said there was like 5 million people who've watched so far the NBA playoffs, which is up. Usually they're declining in statistics the last couple of years, but they are on the up and up, and I think this is going to be good basketball the rest of the way. I think we're pretty much out of time. I don't think we really have time to get to the last topic, but anything else you want to say, put out there about the NBA playoffs before we reconvene next week when we're in the second round?
Yeah, I just want to say go Cavs.
I knew that was coming. I kind of want to see the Timberwolves go further. That's one I really want to see because I think Anthony Edwards has really worked hard and he deserves to actually have a team that cares about going to the playoffs, even though I thought him and Kat were a great combo. But for some reason, they broke that up.
Hey, Nick, speaking of the Timberwolves, one last thing to end the show with. Do you think now with the way he's been playing, if you were starting a franchise or you want to find the future face of the league, do you got more faith now in Anthony Edwards or Luka Doncic now?
That's a great question. I'd probably say Anthony Edwards because from a standpoint of Luka, even though he's great, no doubt in my mind, he's a really, really good player. But you have no idea what you're going to get from him on any given night. He could put up 40 and 10 and 10 and have a triple-double, and then he could suck really bad the next night, and he'll start yelling at the referees and complaining. And even though I've seen Anthony Edwards complain, it's not to the level of Luka by any means whatsoever. And when Luka is lost, he is lost out there. Anthony Edwards, like I remember this from the Olympics too. He will drive to the hoop when he's not shooting well, and he'll get himself to the free throw line. That's what you do when you're having an off night shooting the ball. Luka doesn't do that. What does Luka do? He continues to shoot, and then you see nights where he goes like 5 for 25 from the field, and you're like, why the hell did I sign up for this? So I guess my answer in the long run would be Anthony Edwards because I think he has a more versatile game than Luka does.
I absolutely agree.
So, and I also just like Anthony Edwards, even though he came out and said that I really don't want to be the face of the league. Why wouldn't you want to be the face of the league? That sounds like something you'd want to be, wouldn't it?
And I think he could be with his talent.
Now, it'll be interesting to see if his career trajectory goes up and they eventually win a title. But we'll have to see how that plays out. But that'll do it for this episode of 274, episode 274 of Empty the Bench here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network, presented by Playback. Make sure you like and subscribe by going to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETB Network. As we get closer to 1,000 subscribers, please help by hitting the subscribe button below. And if you can't watch on the video side, listen to Empty the Bench wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, any other platforms we are on. ETB Network Substack, etbnetwork.substack.com. No alley-oop analytics this week, but we will give you NBA playoffs breakdown for round 2, and then we'll go over some other stuff. We'll break down the Dame injury like no other when we get back to our alley-oop analytics show. And we'll talk about Giannis too, because that's an interesting topic. Will he demand a trade out of Milwaukee? So there's plenty to talk about. It just didn't really fit in the scheduling this week. And lastly, Empty the Bench presented by Playback, playback.tv/ETB Network. Check us out. We're doing the NBA playoffs. We're going to do it all the way up to the NBA finals. Hopefully the Cavs make the NBA Finals. That might be a fun thing to watch, by the way. Or even before that, you and Ben duking it out, Celtics Cavs. I think that's going to, in my opinion, that's the best series of the NBA playoffs. I don't think it would even be the NBA Finals, to be quite honest, which is sad, but it's just the way things play out. But playback.tv/ETB Network. Subscribe to our community as it continues to grow. There's going to be some new stuff. We have some MLS that some of our guys are going to be doing, some more NBA, some Major League Baseball. So check it out. All right. That'll do it for this episode. He's Anthony Balester. I'm Nick Morgasen. Have a great day, everybody. We will see you next week for episode 275 of Empty the Bench. Have a good day, everybody.